Hello and welcome to the inner space. I'm Sriram. We have so far explored various fears at the inner space: the fear of judgment, the fear of scarcity, the fear of being inadequate or not good enough. Today, we explore the fear of failure, something every single one of us has experienced. I often ask in my workshops and courses for anyone who's never failed in life to raise their hands. I am yet to see a hand raise. Failure meets all of us wherever we are. It can be nemesis to some and teacher to some. What it is to everyone is a reminder that we are not in control, that we are each human, including the so called greats of any field. Take sport, for example. Look at Michael Jordan in basketball or Roger Federer in tennis. Legends by every definition. Some career stats: Jordan scored just under 50% of his total shot attempts, and Federer won only 54% of all the points he played in his career. Think about that for a moment. In other words, these two legends of their sport were nearly as likely to fail as they were to succeed at every play they made. So, what sets them apart? What makes a champion a champion? Did they not see each point, each game, and each championship lost as a failure? We explore today not just the sting of failure, but what lies beneath it, the quiet stories we tell ourselves when things don't go our way. We look at why our brains remember failure more vividly than success, how the fear of failing can slowly turn into avoidance of effort, and what science and spirituality both reveal about failure and renewal. How composting our failures can grow unexpected wisdom in the soil of our minds. Today, you'll hear about athletes and authors who've fallen and risen. But more importantly, we'll reflect on how we can move through failure, not by denying it, but by listening to what it's trying to teach us. So let's dive in. Failure often begins not in the world, but in the mind, in the stories that we attach to our efforts. I did not succeed becomes I failed, and over time quietly becomes I am a failure. And that small shift from event to identity is part of what creates so much suffering. The loneliness of failure is real, especially when it's public. The paralysis that follows is real too. The hesitation to try again, risk another blow to the ego. Yet, in that same space of inner collapse, something unexpected can happen. A quiet humility, a letting go of control, even a moment of relief as we let go. When everything we plan falls apart, there's nothing left for the mind to hold on to. While this can feel scary, from the embers of failure and the loosened grip of control. With the right perspective, something new can begin to grow. In Japan, there's a beautiful art called kintsugi, the practice of repairing broken pottery with lacquer that's mixed with gold. The cracks and the broken pots are not thrown away or hidden, they are illuminated with lines of gold. The pot is reborn as something that never was and became possible because it got broken. Each fracture becomes part of a new story. What if failure was like that? Not something to fix or erase, but something to integrate. A stroke of gold in the shape of who we are becoming. Across spiritual traditions, this wisdom repeats itself. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, the charioteer, reminds Arjuna, the warrior, Karmanye adhikarastu ma phaleshu tathaschana. You have the right to action, but not to the fruits of action. In other words, failure is caused not by moral weakness or incapacity, but by attachment to outcome. What really matters is showing up fully, doing what's yours to do, and releasing the rest. Richard Rohr calls this the journey of falling upward, how descent often precedes transformation. The mythic heroes all knew this. Icarus fell before he learnt humility. The phoenix burnt before it rose from the ashes. Hanuman, the monkey god, forgot his own power just at the moment when he needed to cross the ocean. We have all experienced such moments in our own life. And perhaps failure isn't a wall, after all, but a doorway, one that asks us to pass through with less pride and more humility, less certainty and more openness, less control and more faith. Because underneath the rubble of every collapse lies a simple truth that control was always an illusion, and what remains when control fades is life itself, raw, unpredictable, and alive with wisdom. Failure is not an objective reality of external circumstance. It is a survival narrative of the brain passed on through generations. In fact, research shows that a single failure or criticism lights up the amygdala, the part of the brain that's responsible for threat detection, more intensely than multiple successes can calm it. That's how our survival system is wired. Ancient brains tuned to looking out for danger. Psychologist Roy Baumeister and colleagues, in their landmark review, Bad is Stronger Than Good, analyzed over 100 studies and found that negative events exert 3 to 5 times the psychological impact of positive events. Neuroscientist Turhan Kanli and co authors showed in their publication in the Journal of Neuroscience through fMRI imaging that amygdala activation was significantly stronger for negative images, and that this activation predicted better recall of those images even weeks later. In other words, if we view failure as a negative event, the brain clings to failure memories as if its survival depended on it. Viewing failure as negative, this negativity bias breeds a loop in our minds, replaying moments of defeat in the mind's theater, each repetition strengthening the old pathways of shame and fear. Honestly, this is a self protective instinct gone rogue. By remembering pain, the brain thinks it can prevent more of it, but instead it deepens the groove of fear and is more likely to view the world with a lens of fear in the future. Sometimes that fear shows up even before failure even happens as anticipatory anxiety. We imagine what could go wrong so vividly that the body reacts as if something has already gone wrong. For me, this is how I moved through middle and high school. There was a constant background fear of failure at exams, a need to do well that was driven by the fear of what if I didn't do well. One may argue that this drove me to study more. I'd say, at best, it did bring me to the table and sat me in my chair in front of my books. Thereafter, my curiosity and love for knowledge took over. Over time, this cycle of fear and avoidance trains us into what psychologist Martin Seligman calls learned helplessness, the collapse of agency when a being stops trying because past efforts seemed futile. I experienced this once I entered the working world. The fear of failure based on past memories of events not going as per my expectation often held me back at the times when my heart actually wanted me to step forward and reach higher. But here's the good news: reflection and contemplation changes everything. In a 2021 study of German university students published in the Frontiers in Psychology journal, participants who kept a resilience diary recording daily challenges and their responses showed measurable improvements in positive affect and coping self efficacy. Resilience, it turns out, grows not by avoidance, but by going through life, acting, and reflecting on learnings and integrating those learnings back into life. Elite athletes echo this truth. In a 2013 study by Hammond and colleagues in the Clinical Journal of Sport Medicine, 34% of elite athletes met the criteria for depression or anxiety. That's one out of every three superstar athletes that you and I know. And this was often linked to self worth that was based on performance. Those athletes that tied their self worth to how they performed were worse off than the others. Even champions are haunted by the feeling of not being good enough. Success offers no immunity. from the fear of failure. But there is another way. Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, reframed self doubt as a cognitive safeguard, as generating a humility that refines decision making rather than paralyzing it. In other words, when doubt is viewed from the reference frame of fear, it can be paralyzing. When it is viewed as life suggesting alternate courses and teaching us humility in order to refine our decision making, that can actually support our actions. Researchers have found that more than 50% of participants who faced major adversity through a study reported greater appreciation of life, deeper relationships, or renewed purpose. Evidence that trauma can become fuel for transformation through reflection and meaning making. And the power to give meaning to our life events, be they successes or failures, lies in our hands. Failure, then, isn't the opposite of progress. It's the soil from which deeper wisdom sprouts, the holy ground through which the next wave of our growth is born. In my life, reviewing failure after failure, with failure being defined as anything that didn't give me true happiness, ended up being the compass that led me to a fulfilling vocation that both fueled and satisfied my interests and gave me the sense of being in contribution to humanity rather than just to myself. And this is something I sought, to have a vocation that serves both me and people at large. The holy ground of failure that can provoke reflection and even challenge beliefs visits even those we call the greats. Michael Jordan once said, I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. He missed more than 9,000 shots, lost almost 300 games, and on 26 occasions was trusted with the game winning shot and missed. Yet, this didn't stop him from picking himself back up and asking for the ball once again and giving it another shot. It's this repeated falling and rising, falling and falling upward that's made him a legend. Roger Federer shared something similar in his commencement address at Dartmouth in 2019, that he, in his entire career, won only 54% of all the points that he ever played, meaning he lost nearly just as much as he won. The greatest of our times fail almost as much as they succeed. J.K. Rowling, in her Harvard speech, described failure as stripping away the inessential. When she began writing Harry Potter, she was a single mother living in a tiny flat, recently divorced, surviving on state benefits, and battling clinical depression. She once said she, at the time, was as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. 12 publishers rejected her original manuscript. Yet, in her own words, rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. Failure for her removed every illusion except the one that mattered most to her, that she still had a story she wanted to tell. Closer home in India, Dr. Abdul Kalam's story reminds us that national success was once personal failure. His early space launch attempts at ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, failed publicly and painfully. Years later, he would write that those failures built the very foundations of India's space program because they taught the team not just how to fly, but also how to fall with purpose and resilience. And then there's Hanuman from the Ramayana, the great Indian epic. As a little child, Hanuman kept leaping at the rising sun, mistaking it for a fruit. Sages, disturbed by his playful might, blessed him with a gentle curse that he would forget his power at the moment when he most needed it, until someone reminded him of it. Years later, standing before the vast ocean and facing Lanka, Hanuman hesitated, paralyzed not by weakness or doubt, but by forgetting. It took Jambavan's words, "Remember who you are," to awaken his strength. In that instant, Hanuman remembered. He grew vast, roared to the skies, and leapt. His leap was not just across the sea, but across self doubt, from amnesia to awareness, from failure to flight. Perhaps that's what failure truly is, not an ending, but a pause in remembrance, the moment just before we recall who we are. So let's explore a few ways to move through failure and not around it. Each of these practices is an invitation to meet failure with awareness, compassion, and curiosity. The failure timeline, seeing the arc of your own becoming. This practice is a very simple practice that helps you look back and connect the dots between failure and growth. Take a blank page in your journal and draw a simple line through the center. This can be horizontal or vertical, doesn't matter. Mark along the line the moments in your life that you consider failures today: personal, professional, relational. Next to each moment, write a sentence on the following question: what value or quality did this event strengthen in me? With the past failures of our life, we may put ourselves in the skin of Hanuman. Standing at the brink of that event, we may have seen only an abyss, and yet, having crossed over to the other side, we may take a moment to wonder, what did that event awaken in us? What do we now know about ourselves that we did not know back then? By the end of this exercise, you may begin to see how failure may have shaped more of your growth and who you are today than success ever did. Cognitive reframing, training the mind to see clearly. This practice invites you to notice your inner dialogue around failure and gently rewrite it. Write down a thought that often arises when things don't go as planned. For example, I failed. I'm not good at this. I am not cut out for this. Now, below that thought, create a new line that's both kinder to yourself and truer. Maybe the line goes, I didn't get the outcome that I had hoped for, but I am learning what works and what doesn't. Or you may write, I'm still here and still committed to what I want in my life. Over time, this practice of reviewing and reframing our thoughts builds a new mental habit, seeing failure as data and not as identity. Making peace with imperfection, a micro practice. This is a daily experiment in loosening the grip that the need for control has in our minds. Each day, deliberately invite a small failure into your life. Attempt something imperfectly. Ask a question that you don't know the answer to, or say, I don't know, to a question that's asked of you. Try a new movement, recipe, or conversation where you might stumble, or just dive in to an action that you have been thinking about with zero expectation for what might happen. Let your nervous system learn that failure is survivable and maybe even gentle and joyful. Freedom grows from renewing our relationship with failure. The Resilience Journal, integrating learning into growth. This practice is adapted from research with university students who built resilience in their lives by reflecting daily on the challenges that they faced. Each evening, as you go to bed, note down 3 things from the day. Number 1, a challenge that you faced or something that felt difficult initially. Number 2, how you responded to that challenge or event. And number three, what did you learn from this experience? What strength or insight emerged for you? With time and daily practice for a period of 30 days, the Resilience Journal helps broaden your attention from what went wrong to what was handled well, teaching your mind to see capability and capacity where it once saw only weakness or ineptitude. Three good tries. Finding progress in imperfection. This practice comes from the world of sport. Athletes use this as a simple way to stay growth focused after a match or a training session or a game. After any workday or project, write down 3 attempts that didn't work but taught you something. It could be 3 plays that you made, 3 risks that you took, 3 actions that didn't work out. Write down any 3 attempts that didn't work. But ask the question, what did I learn from these attempts? What are they teaching me? Notice what each attempt reveals about your process, your timing, your focus, your ingoing assumptions. The 3 good tries practice keeps your attention on learning rather than on the outcome. It cultivates a habit of mastery, not perfection seeking. In closing, failure humbles us. It doesn't make us small, but it makes us real. It strips away illusion and brings us closer to the truth that we are learning beings, not finished products. Every fall, every setback is a reminder that growth is not a straight line, it's a spiral. Sometimes you circle back to what feels like the same lesson, except each time a little wiser, a little gentler, and a little more self aware. When we stop seeing failure as a verdict and start seeing it as feedback, something inside relaxes. Curiosity returns. The fear of failing softens into a willingness to learn to stand up again. And that is how humility becomes strength, not the lowering of the self, but the openness to keep evolving and keep rising higher. Like Hanuman standing before the sea, we too may forget again and again how capable we truly are. And then, through a word, a moment, a memory, or an action, we remember. That remembrance is grace. So, as we close today, a reflection to carry with you. What have you learned through failure that success could never have taught you? And some affirmations to end our day with. I am not my failures. I am what I learn from my failures. Every fall contributes to my becoming. I am learning to remember who I am and what I am capable of in this body and mind. May we keep walking gently with humility and curiosity, falling upward and forward each time, remembering our essence again and again. Until next time, here at the inner space.